You don't fundamentally feel that heart expansion until you become a father.
I don't want to be the kind of dad that is absent, the kind of dad who runs a business and won't be there when his son needs.
I literally thought that was my job. Go to work, make money, put a roof over their head. When my first daughter came along, I was completely ill-equipped to hold space for a growing human. It was up to me to break those chains. Alcoholism, abuse.
We do not listen to words, we watch. Kids watch.
So I am the gold standard for my daughters.
By the way, I'm later today going to find out the gender of first child. Welcome, Clint. It's great to have you on Shut the Fuck Up and Listen.
Absolutely, man. It's an absolute honour and a privilege, and I'm just grateful that, you know, for the 5 minutes we had on intro here to catch up on what's happening in your life, happening in my life, and let's see where this conversation goes, brother. I'm really excited, and
we'll get there. We'll definitely get there, and I think what actually might start that is my first question. I see on your LinkedIn bio, there's a dad, a man, a leader, a teacher, and a coach. I'd love to know, which one of those makes you the most proud?
Obviously many hats, similar role, but a father. And again too, we just touched on that briefly. You're about to go into fatherhood, or you're on the early stages of fatherhood and that path for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But
by the way, for everyone who doesn't know, this is probably the announcement of that.
Oh,
good. We're not live. By the time this airs, I think I will have announced it.
My man. Yeah. You said nothing is off limits today, mate.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is off limits. Yeah, absolutely being a father. You know, we and you, I was so self-centered, even within, you know, being in a long-term relationship. Being able to commit into marriage is something heavy for a man. It's huge. You know, you go from this bachelor lifestyle and solely focusing on yourself, and luckily enough for me, it looked like my health as well, my career, making money, showing up in the world. But you know, that heart expands when you connect to someone on an intimate level and you commit to a lifetime of challenge, struggle, but you know, potentially growth, deepness of connection, relationship, intimacy, love, sex, whatever it is. But you don't fundamentally feel that heart expansion until you become a father, and it just increases your capacity for love. But also too, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you get the highs, you also get the lows. But it's something that I think really motivated me to be better. I think first and foremost was not the husband hat, it was the father hat. That's for sure, Alessandro.
We didn't know that we were going to jump into this space about fathership. That was not what we spoke about in our little pre-setup for the call, but you know, I might even take the opportunity just to learn a little bit more with me becoming a father soon, and I think that would help other people out here. I'd like to know, I mean, you're about to go this, if you don't mind me sharing, you're about to go this a third time, and you shared off camera that you've had 2 daughters and a boy, and a boy is about to arrive, so to speak. So I'd love to know, when we're talking about better husbands, you know, my whole thing is about better husbands, but how much of being a better husband is linked with being a better father? Is there anything that's outside of being a better husband? But yeah, what sits outside and what sits with inside, or is it all part of the same thing?
Look, it can be all encompassing, that's for sure. But I've listened to you and I've followed you, and the intimate relationship, the partner, the wife, she reflects your shadow. And she reflects parts of you that you may not necessarily like, the parts of you that are potentially inadequate, the parts of you that you need to work on. If you can multiply that, if you can genuinely focus on being a good father and a parent and then multiply that's what it feels like, you know, and for only a father of daughters, and I'm about to step into being a father of a boy and a father of a man one day, is that it's like my reflection or my shadow is highlighted, and particularly my eldest, the firstborn, she highlighted all of my flaws, all of my inadequacy as a man, being able to hold space. I thought, you know, in the business space or career space, and even within my relationship, I thought, I got this shit covered. I can breathe through, I can be non-reactive, I can look at problems and solve them without attaching emotion to them. And when my first daughter came along, I was completely ill-equipped, completely ill-prepared, and I had no concept of what it actually looked like to hold space for a growing human, for a child who cried when she was hungry, for a child that, you know, didn't listen when she was a toddler, for a child that understands the world through their own egocentric view. All it did was really highlight my own ego and where I really needed to actually work on. And I'm so grateful that she has taught me so many lessons. I express that gratitude to her, although she doesn't quite conceptually understand it. But it was like on steroids, man. And it has really highlighted my own desire to be a better human, to be able to make sure, particularly we might go in this space or not, but my childhood was not one that reflects the space that I'm raising my kids in right now. And it's something that I'm very proud of. But the generational trauma, the generational change, the generational shackles of angry man, reactive dad, provide and protect. It was up to me to break those chains. Alcoholism, abuse, whatever, however deep we want to go, Alessandro, it's really important that I provide a space where my children are held, where my children feel safe to express their authenticity, where they're loved, warts, flaws and all. My role is to create safety so that they can express themselves and find themselves and figure out who they are in this great big world, and then arm them with the capacity to go out there and have impact and create change and live wonderful, fulfilling lives themselves. And yeah, I'll be honest, man, I should have just put dad first. It's my major motivating force.
It's interesting. You said this, I had no idea what it was like to hold space for a young human growing. So now that you do have an idea what it means to hold space, what does it mean?
Yeah, like I said, you just think you have it all figured out until you don't. And I talk this in within my coaching space. There's two kind of men. There's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and you can either look at every opportunity as an opportunity. I think you might have mentioned this on one of your podcasts as well. Is like, what lesson can I learn from this? Every struggle, every resistance, every moment in life where your challenge is an opportunity to actually reflect and go, okay, what am I contributing to this? What can I learn from this? How can I get better? How can I adapt? How can I change? How can I grow? How can I heal? How can I continually improve so that my life, again, when we're seeking peace, or, I don't want my life to be easier, but I want to improve so that I can make it easier for those around me. I think, we are inherently men who want to provide that safety and that structure for women, for young women as well, to be able to be women. I had no idea, man. I had no idea. I literally thought my role, and again, we can now dive a little bit deeper into that as the better husband and trying to align with your audience. I literally thought that was my job. Go to work, make money, put a roof over their head, and on the weekends I can go fishing and have my mates and drink beer, and that would be the extent of my capacity. I can cook, and I do a little bit of washing, and we'll see where the tide takes us. And it was a big shock. It was a big shock, brother, because again, too, my wife is a professional. She wanted to get back to work. She wanted to make money. She has big goals and audacious dreams. And again, another realization was being able to, understanding my role to be able to facilitate that for her. I just thought it was going to be easy, man. Wasn't I wrong?
You thought it was going to be easy. So what's actually changed within you?
Back to what we said right at the start, Alessandro, is, and again, now my work really aligns with that as well, something that I'm very proud of, is that the world is bigger than me. The world is not here to serve me. I'm here to serve the world. And I think that once you actually bring human energy, human life force into the world, that opens up the doorway. It literally opens up a spiritual doorway to access more energy, more capacity, more emotion, highs and lows, as I mentioned. The spectrum all of a sudden goes from, you're operating within this bandwidth of highs and lows, but until you have children and extend that family, it kind of magnifies. Again, I'm talking about a magnification or multiplication effect.
I'm assuming that the place of that's going is that it's opened your capacity for service.
Absolutely.
You're not the center of the world. I mean, that's if we're going to talk about boy behaviors, straight to man behaviors, like that's key number one, is like, I am not the center of the world. I am part of the community and I'm here for service. Yeah, it's really beautiful. So that just magnifies within that. And what are your take on, I know we're going hard on the parenting angle here at the moment, but I think the timing is just aligned on the specific day.
Yeah.
For everyone that doesn't know, by the way, I'm later today going to go and find out the gender of our first child, and I told Clint off camera, if you're listening to the show, you're already asking the right question. How do I show up better? Maybe things feel harder than they should at home. Maybe you know something needs to shift, but you're just not sure where to start. Here's what I know. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you just never got the manual. Nobody teaches men how to be husbands. Nobody shows you how to navigate the hard conversations, regulate your emotions, or turn your marriage into an actual team. That's why I created Better Husband in 2-Minute Emails. It's one email every Saturday morning with one tool you can use that week. There's no therapy speak, no blame, just the skills that actually move the needle. 2 minutes, one Saturday morning, that's your entry point. Because 3 months of focused work beats 20 years repeating the same damn pattern. Links in the show notes. First email lands this Saturday. And I think that's why it's morphed into this. But what I want to know, Clint, is like, when you are, looking at the magnification of this is with kids, what happens with your wife, though? Is she part of that magnification? Or is she... Yes, I would love to know the dynamic that changes, and what do you do with that dynamic change?
Yeah, so again, speaking from lived experience, and any man that's been there through the birth of their own children can certainly agree with this, is that level of depth or compassion or pride or love that a man can feel for his woman, again, is magnified when you actually see your woman give birth to something that you've co-created. Is extremely spiritual. Your depth of love, again, expands for that woman. But again, and I'm looking also retrospectively, Alessandro, obviously, like I'm about to go in the trenches. Again, it's something that I'm genuinely excited for, but also shit scared of, because I've got my life dialed in, man, like my work's good, my kids are independent, they're doing fantastic things, they help out around the home. My wife, she's a rock star, and again, that comes through to what's happened over the last decade as well. I'm shit scared, man, and shit's about to get really real, and I'm completely aware of that. But what happens is that they run in parallel. Your level for expansion doesn't just end and begin with your kids. It also begins with your partner. Like I said, you guys will get to connect on a deeper spiritual level. And again, too, like I said, like your children reflect that shadow part of yourself. Your wife certainly does. And a man, we talked about that, needs to own his shit. He needs to actually realize that life changes. Life only gets harder. As your sphere of influence grows, as your responsibility grows, you've got two options. You either go inwards, or you go inwards and you stop and you become a victim of circumstances, and you just say, this is the way that shit is, it's the way that it was for my father and his father's father, and this is the be all and end all of life. I'm just going to sit here, get fat, put my feet up, and either get divorced or just have an unhappy marriage with no connection, no intimacy. C'est la vie. Or I continue to focus energy in that area of my life. I can continue to focus energy in my ability to hold space for my woman, just as I have for my children. And then all of a sudden that expands into a man's purpose of, okay, well, if I can hold it for my women, maybe I can teach men the same thing. It's been an amazing decade, Alessandro, that is for sure. And I look forward to the next, how old am I? The next 6 decades, if my wife can hang on for as long as I can. And it's going to be amazing, man. It's going to be amazing.
Continual growth between the two of you. It's interesting, like you reminded me when you were saying that about this, making sure, one, that men know that life will always change and will always have the difficulty to it. I'm not sure if it was Way of the Superior Man, but there was a certain line in there which was like, if a man wants to get away from the change and the difficulty of life and wife, he can go become a monk.
Yes.
That's the only way.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I understand the allure. Of going off to India and becoming a monk and never having to deal with life or wife. But that is not life or wife.
It's not reality, no. And, the eternal sabbatical, although it is appealing, where does it leave us? Maybe closer to self, or maybe closer to God. It's funny because you prompted me.
Or maybe closer to death, funnily enough.
Potentially, yeah.
If you think about,
and being okay with that. Being okay with that complete surrender. I had and I can't even remember the context, but basically it was something to do with the reflection of your wife and how it shows up in you and your reaction and your response. But one of the comments was, I don't think this is relevant for a Buddhist monk. And my response, again, just reciprocated what you just said, Alessandro. The reality is that men in the trenches with wives and young children, they don't have time to practice Buddhism. They don't have time to become monks. They need to figure this shit out in real time. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind.
It's interesting. My wife and I had a conversation about this morning, and you know, I don't know where everyone stands spiritually or anything like that, but even if we, like, I'm quite influenced by Buddhism and like the Eastern ideals and the Tao and things like that, and I really love their takes. But when we get down to the heart of it, even whatever religion you believe in or spirituality you believe in, we are here in physical form as human. The simple, like all the way down to it, we are here in physical form as human. And to deny the physical form as human and try and seek solely the spiritual or solely the monk on the mountain is denying the existence and the reality that we're in. And it doesn't mean that we can't go and seek spirituality. I mean, I think it's really great. Like, I actually think everyone should at one point seek it to remember where they're connected to. But in the end, we are here to live this life.
Yes.
To be in this, to be in the shit, to be in the trenches. And I think it's a good thing for men to understand, is that they will never get that peace until they die. And so learn to love the war of it. Yeah.
I love that frame, man. I believe that, you know, the goal of transcendence almost takes away from the magic and the purity of life, which is right there in the present moment. And unfortunately, like you said, it's imperfect. And in every single opportunity for feedback, every single opportunity that causes friction and discomfort, there's an opportunity there for you to create more peace and become more present and become more entwined with that transcendent goal, with your partner, with your family, with your community, and with your internal purpose. I think it's really powerful that we kind of don't get caught in that trap, because it's happening right before your eyes, man.
Yeah. There was also something you said earlier, which I'd love to double back on, and I have a question for it. Is, you said you're shit scared. You know, you've got the third child coming and you're shit scared. Those words. Now, interestingly enough, I'd love to talk about fear and masculine and feminine dynamics. So awesome. I heard somebody say to me once, which was really interesting, and I've not really spoken to anyone about this on this podcast, so I think this would be a good conversation with you. But I heard somebody say to me that they never let their wife know when they are scared. They let other men know when they are scared. And the reason for this is that they can then really show and be vulnerable with their emotions to let it out, but they don't ruin the frame of their wife, because if their wife cannot take it, then they resent their wife. Then they will, like, because their wife will instantly feel unsafe, and the wife might attack them for it, and then they're in the spiral of, but you don't understand me. She's in the spiral of, but you don't make me feel safe, and it goes all the way like that. So firstly, what do you think of that framing? Do you agree? And secondly, are you telling your wife that you're shit scared?
All right. I can keep this really short and drill this back to you in 2 sentences, but we might start with 1 sentence and then we'll expand from there. I agree with you 100% wholeheartedly, and it is a lesson that I learned through my own experience. My wife wants to know that I am an emotional being. She wants to know that I feel. She wants to know that I can hold her emotions. She wants to know that I can hold the emotions of my children to make sure that they are safe, not just at a physical level. Like I said, you know, the role of the father in past generations was to provide that physical safety. That has evolved. Men like you and I have this awareness that we now need to provide emotional and spiritual safety for not just the women, but the men in our lives. Have changed. Would I say to my wife, I'm shit scared about what's about to happen over the next 12 months? Hell no, brother. Hell no. My role is to hold her. And I think I mentioned to you, we're having a home birth. You know, I can't show one inkling of fear in that moment, man. I am there to hold space for her. I'm there to hold her frame. I'm here to get her in her body. I'm here to talk her through the hellfire she's about to go through. I'm here to encourage her. I'm here to hold space for her. And this is what I'm so excited about, actually. This is going to be a full test of my masculine frame. So I am excited and shit scared about what's coming. I'm also shit scared about raising a boy, because that goes back into my parts and my past and how I was raised, but we can talk on that a little bit later. But I agree with you 100%. The woman is not there to be my emotional sounding board. She's there to show me and shine light on my shadow part so that I can heal and we can grow together. I have to hold space for her so she can be a woman. And I've come to that realization only in the last couple of years, and it has fucking changed the dynamic of our relationship no end. Once I started to own my own emotions and build a network of men, and that's where we're going to segue into next. That's why we need a brotherhood. That's why we need wise counsel. That's why we need the round table, the board, whatever it might be. Men need other men to realize that they're not alone in the way they process emotions, feel emotions, and show up in the world. You know, men's emotional struggles. And again, I'm sure we've studied a lot. I've listened a lot with you and some of the guys, Dr. Anna, again, he talks about this rites of passage, men being able to hold space for other men is critical for the modern man to be able to access his own emotional capacity so he can hold space through his woman, not weakness, fear, or vulnerability, sadness. Like we're here to hold a frame so that they can feel all the emotion and know that we are okay with how they feel at any given moment. And then, like you said, then you get that spiral loop of reaction, defensiveness, blame, and it doesn't go anywhere. That's not an opportunity for any relationship to grow in depth.
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing that I see a lot with men, and I've seen it a lot in myself. Like, so it's so funny because the moment when you see patterns within yourself and then you start seeing reflect in other people, you can almost just assume that it's just widespread. But I saw it in myself first, which was I made my wife my full emotional center. So my emotions were tied to her emotions. Like I always talk about in my coaching in the academy and different places like this, I'll talk about how, anchoring. So if we're a boat on the top of, on the water, we want to anchor into the bottom of the ground, which is our sense of self. But if we anchor into our wives, it's like anchoring into a submarine and the captain's on crack and your boat is going around everywhere, right?
Yep.
But interestingly enough, like it has, so one, you're making your wife feel unsafe, right? Because she feels like she has to, it's like that whole thing of being passive and then the mental load is happening and then they feel like they have to step up into it. But what I find really interesting about this is this idea that a man gets, and I've seen this objection so often. In actual fact, in responding to my emails this morning, I saw it twice in response to one of my latest emails. Men going, but it's unfair. It's unfair. Why do I have to hold her emotion and she can't hold my emotion? I have an idea of why this is. I have a why, but I'd love to know what your idea of why men are saying this is unfair.
So I have an idea on this too, Alessandro, and without using your own words, like that is a boy. That is not a man who understands his role in the world, and is a boy who is a victim of circumstance. And at some point throughout his childhood, the game wasn't unfair, and that's the lens that he has portrayed emotion through and felt emotion through. There is space for people to hold emotion for him, but from my belief, if you want to build depth of relationship and intimacy with your partner, it is not to make her your emotional anchor. It is to find men who lift you up, who can hold space for you. You solve problems together. Your rational mind works better in community than isolated and in alone. And I just think that fairness is not the game. There are no rules that define fairness in terms of emotional capacity, but I think if men can really understand the difference between how a woman acts and feels and expresses emotionally and how safety is a core tenet of your connection, then it's no longer about being fair. You look at other avenues to go, okay, how can I feel? How can I access my emotion? How can I externalize and release this emotion? Because again, what is emotion? It's energy in motion. Men, we feel emotion, and unless we're in tune with our body and have developed this level of self-awareness and body awareness that allows us to recognize those internal patterns in our body and the way it responds to certain stimulus, we're trapped. We're trapped. We're trapped in our own body. We're trapped in our own past. We're trapped in our own reactions. And then we become a victim. We're like, well, this is not fair. I need someone to be able to emotionally dump on, emotionally drain on. And there are people out there, but unfortunately, boy, man, child, however you want to frame it, it's not your wife.
It's interesting, but we're skirting around something here. So yes, I
Yes.
100% agree with you, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
it's definitely boy behavior. But I think what causes that boy behavior, and this is something that I see over and over again, I believe what's causing that boy behavior, we can go Dr. Arna's approach, he would say it's like lack of initiation, right? Or a lack of
Yep,
rite
yep,
of passage. I think that's a huge part of it. But another part of it, which doesn't actually come up usually in the rites of passage work, comes outside, is our whole society has forgotten that men and women are not the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not the same fucking thing. And so
Yes.
it's like we're trying to apply the rules of one to the other, but we don't know where these rules start and end. And so our definitions of what fair and not fair are is like this, it doesn't
blurred.
work. So when, it's blurred. And when a man goes, it's not fair because I've given her space, the Dr. Robert Glover's approach is that's a covert contract where he's assuming that because he's given space, she needs to give him space. But these are two different beings. They are different. And I see that over and over again in science now. Science seems to want to blur the lines, but I'm like, you're trying to fix something that's not necessarily true. Like we're ignoring the fact that one has a completely different hormone set than the other.
Yep. We operate on different cycles, the 28-day versus the 24-hour cycle. There's so many fundamental differences, not just in our physiology, but in our emotional capacity. And again, some of that is obviously behavioural, some of it is nurture. And again, too, we talk about the generation of men raised by emotionally and physically unavailable men, and I put my hand up, I'm one of those men. I had no fucking idea, man. And I still don't have any idea. I'm curious. I'm learning all the time. I'm learning through what works and what doesn't work with my own relationship, with my own clients, with my own children. But we are also a generation of men that have been raised by women, and we are, again, too, like you said, now all of a sudden the lines are blurred. We've been raised, what's the teacher workforce is like 80 to 90% women, I think, are here in Australia anyway. It's something absurd. Like the pendulum has swung so far the other way that our emotional influences our emotional goals, and then you can almost lean into that rite of passage work. Like when we're boys and young men, that's all been blurred. And again, too, I was raised by a woman with a sister in a very feminine home, and I was taught to be the sensitive new age. I remember my mum, you're a snag. Oh, what the fuck does that even mean, mum? A sensitive new age guy. So that happened in like the 80s and 90s, this conditioning pattern of, you need to be in touch with your emotions. You need to be vulnerable. You need to be able to openly express how you are feeling. But I was never given the tools or the framework or an opportunity to actually connect with men in that space. Because when I was playing sports, it was competition. There was no sign for weakness. There was no sign for emotion. The only emotion that you felt on the battlefield of sport was celebration and joy when you won the game, when you beat the other team. And I think that really plays into it, is obviously that nurture state and what's happened over the past 30, 40 years in modern culture, or Western culture, Western society. But at a deeper level, we are inherently different. And I think that is just one of the biggest challenges again too. If you're being programmed from such a young age to feel emotion, express emotion, and enhance your emotional capacity and emotional intelligence, but don't actually even understand what that means because you're a boy, a man, a male, in a modern world, like where does it leave you? It doesn't leave you with any confidence. It literally disables you, disempowers you, and makes you put your hand up and say, well, this isn't fair. This is not what I was taught. This is not what I was shown. Well, why does the game feel so unfair?
I'd love to let's bring it back to the father aspect, especially with this man and woman distinction. You're about to have a boy.
Yes.
You've had two girls.
Yes.
What are you scared of repeating with your boy? What are you scared of repeating
From my childhood or with my children?
Well,
So-
specifically in parenting your son coming up.
Yeah,
Repeating from your
absolutely. My biggest fear is he's being like my old man, I remember as a young man distinctly saying, I remember I was maybe 10 and I was walking home from school with one of my schoolmates, and I remember saying, we were talking about beer because his old man drank and my old man drank, and they drank VB. And again, I know you spent some time in Australia, Alessandro, so you know what VB is. It's poison in a brown bottle.
Victorian bitter.
Yeah, for a hard-earned thirst. And I remember saying to my mate, and it was just clear as day, we're on the footpath there, and we must have just been having a discussion about our drunk dads the night before, and I said, I'm never going to grow up. When I grow up, I'm never going to drink beer. I'm never going to be like my dad. I just remember distinctly saying that to him. And then when my father left, it was like, that was my mother's shaming tool. It was like, you're just like your father. Yeah, look like your father. You're going to be just like your father. And so that became my motivation to pull the pendulum full the other way and dissociate from my father figure. And then literally the only tool or capacity I had as a father was to do the opposite of what he did. And that also then flowed into my intimate relationship as well. How do I be the opposite of my father? Well, I don't drink. Certain things, I don't use certain language. I became passive. I became, like you said, the Robert Glover model, I became the nice guy. But as a parent, and now becoming a parent of a young man, I am just so armored with such an arsenal of tools to be able to hold space for my son, to be able to teach him how to feel, how to connect, how to communicate. I have this incredible property. I live here on the farm. We have access to growing food, raising animals, hunting. I'm just so excited to be able to share all of those pivotal growth moments with him that I didn't get as a young man. But also too, I genuinely, I don't want to wish my life away, but I genuinely look forward to the day when he starts to push back, when he gets to that age of 13 or 14 and we need to go out in the bush and we need to get naked and we need to skin a beast with our bare hands. I'm just so genuinely excited for that, Alessandro. But yes, my biggest fear is to not be there for him. Because that was the wound that I held for the longest. When I was a young man and my father left, the biggest wound that I held was I was not worthy, I was not lovable, I was not enough. And that evolved. Again, I only know this now. I've only developed this over the last 10 years of how I seeked external validation, how I seeked love, how I seeked comfort from women in particular. My goal and my role is to just ensure that my son feels held, feels safe, and feels loved just as he is, just how he is, just how he behaves. And that I'm always going to be there for him, mate.
I love that. Even as you share that, I just even think of my own wound. It's so funny how people all around the world can have the same wound, but from completely different circumstances. Don't know if you know my story. Like my father is actually not on that spectrum of not a drinker or anything like that. He was not a drinker at all, but he was absent nonetheless. When we were 7 years old, my mother, brother, and I moved to Australia, and my dad stayed back in South Africa. And then they divorced within that process. So my dad never came, and he never sold his business, and he always still ran his steel manufacturing business back in South Africa. And the words you used to describe your wound are exactly the same words that I use. He wasn't there, which made me feel like I wasn't enough, which made me also seek attention from the feminine, because that's all I got my attention from. And it's just this interesting thing about emotion, like absent fathers. And he wasn't a bad father, my father. But yet again, I still have this whole thing of I don't want to be the kind of dad that is absent like he was. I don't want to be the kind of dad who runs a business and won't be there when his son needs it, or will just buy him things rather than actually be there with him.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so important for a young man to have that healthy, masculine, embodied role model. Like, this is what's missing. This is what was missing for us. And, obviously we've recognized the parts of ourselves that have reflected our behaviors and what needs to be worked on. And, I know a little bit about your story with Julia about, your discovery of like, what is a man? What is a man? And that's still something that I'm working on every day. And I'm trying to lead. I'm trying to lead in my relationship with
as we said, we don't stop working on that.
No. It's eternal.
Unless we want to go fucking become a monk.
Yeah, no, and that's not an option, man. We're about to, both of us are about to go into the trenches and know what it's all about. And I relate to that as well. And I talk to a lot of men, and interesting that you brought up, and I'm glad that you did. We're talking about the father wound, and when I bring this up with my coaching clients as well, is that, when and off the bat, we're only going to go very shallow here, is like, what was your childhood like? It was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not here to blame my father. I'm not here to blame your father, but, fundamentally how you were raised These are wounds / a scar that needs to be addressed. And again, so many men are afraid to address that scar. They've suppressed the experience, and what is happening in their adult lives is those patterns are showing up and they're crumbling because they don't have the capacity to actually own, in your words, their shit, own their own emotion, own their incapacity to be able to hold space, because they're never emotionally developed, because they didn't have a father who was there in the way that they needed as a young man. And that's my biggest fear.
John Wineland has a beautiful line saying that the initiation of today is not like what it used to be. Like the rite of passage, so to speak, of today is not what it used to be in times of old, to test yourself for the protection of the community or whatever. It's to actually gain the strength to face your inner fear, to face your wound, to face your hurt.
Yep.
And when you actually do that within a container, that's what the modern day initiation is to face that wound, get into the warrior mindset, so to speak. So you still have to like bear up and fight. But you're doing it to face the shit that you didn't or haven't until now. I can imagine that comes up with parenting a lot.
Absolutely,
That's the
man.
mirror that you're actually having to face.
Yeah, every day. Every day.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What I'm very excited about finding out the gender today, to be honest. Well, I don't think it's going to be today. It's going to be at some point in this. How would you... I mean, I'm just going to use you as a coach for me.
Let's do it.
How would you view becoming a parent for each gender? Is there any difference in how you prepare as a man?
Yes. Yes, there certainly is. And every single time we've found out the gender, for no other reason than being able to be prepared. And... Again, like I said, 10 years ago when I became a father for the first time, I was completely ill-prepared, you know. I started to read the books, but the books around baby sleep and, you know, how to look after a baby. And then that evolved into, I think, Steve Biddulph wrote Raising Girls, Raising Boys, A New Manhood. I love his work as well. And there's a whole heap of psychology books around raising kids in love. And, you know, they're all incredibly empowering. And then you get to actually... trial and error these processes in real time with your child. And, you know, children are incredibly forgiving. You know, you get plenty of opportunities to fix your fuck ups. You get plenty of opportunities to grow with them. You get plenty of feedback, man, and feedback can look like behavior, language, lash outs, and it changes again too. And again too, like Little Women, they are representative of their mother in every single way. And again too, from a young age, man, like, you know, you spoke about inherent differences, you know, and they are just gentler. They're more emotionally attuned. They're more emotional. They're more likely to go off or go inwards or express in every single way, which makes you uncomfortable. So to answer your question, Alessandro, the answer is yes, you need to prepare for them differently. And the big reason in this, I think, and again too, part of my work I've evolved with this, and this is why I'm so excited to now be able to raise a young man, is that in a nutshell is your role, my role, again, everyone is going to define their own roles, I believe, but your role as a man for a young woman is to model the behavior that she will be accustomed to, that she will grow with, and that she will want from her future relationships. You do that by the way you treat their mother, and you do that by the way you treat them. What is it like to have a masculine role model in the home that protects them, that can hold his own emotions and contain space for them, that can teach them, that can guide them, that can lead them, that can protect them? And what does it look like to be treated by a man who embodies that system and holds deep space and connection with their mother? So I am the gold standard for my daughters. You know, if I want my daughters to grow up thinking that alcoholism, abuse, arguments, DV, whatever it looks like, rage, anger, short fuses, if I want them to grow up and think that that's the norm, then that's what I embody. But coming to that realization early is that this is my role, is to embody what I want them, because they fucking deserve it, man. These kids are just incredible. I'm not going to show you photos. I'm not going to get on my high horse and tell you how incredible they are. But they are absolute gifts from God. And I'm so great. I can if you want. I'm so grateful for them. And I'm so grateful that, you know, I get to create opportunities for them and I get to share life with them. On the flip side, what is your role as a man, and as a father to a son. It's the opposite of that. Your role is to embody through your own leadership and your own action, not through your words. Words are empty, man. Is what it is like for them to grow up to be a man. So what it looks like to align your speech with your words, integrity. What does it look like to honor your word? What values do you establish within your family unit that they need to embody and align with so that they can fulfill their role in the world? What does it look like to treat a woman? What does it look like to work? What is the purpose behind work? Again, to having a father that embodies these attributes and lives his life by that standard is just going to open up so many opportunities for him. And again, too, like I'm incredibly grateful for the life I live. I've learned things the hard way. I really hope that he can come to a level of understanding that I didn't have to come to when I was 40, when he's 20. And, this is my role as a father, is to embody the behaviors that he is going to take on as a young man, as a boy, through example.
I love that. So if you're listening to this, I think that's very big and well worth repeating. When you are parenting a daughter, you are embodying or almost being a role model for who they are going to be with, because regardless of whether judgment on this, it is what is going to happen. Their fundamental idea of what a good partner is will be based off of you, whether you are good or bad. It'll be based off of you. And then for a man, it's not about the words. I think that's also why a lot of men hold wounds for their fathers, is they always told them what they should be rather than embodied what they should be. And we do not listen to words. We watch. Kids watch. So if you're parenting a boy, then it's about embodying and discipline. Not to say that you shouldn't have discipline and body for a daughter, but yeah, I think that's a really beautiful way of doing it, is to look at it through those frames, because I think it changes how you view the angle.
Yeah, and going back to what you said just earlier, is that boys are different and girls are different. So it's that action, it's that behavior that you model that, especially young boys, that's how they're going to receive, that's how they're going to learn, and that's how they're going to act. So from a very young age, you're going to be aware of this, my man. I know that. I'm aware of it this time around. Yes, there's a huge element of fear. Am I good enough? Will I fuck this up? Let's hope I don't. But, I'm quietly confident, man, and I'm quietly excited as well.
Sounds amazing. How can people get in touch with you? How would you like them to react with you online? I'm going to put links down in the bottom, but let me know, like, what is something that you're excited about right now that you'd like people to get in touch with that you're doing? Yeah,
absolutely. Appreciate it, Alessandro. My Instagram handle is Almar Life. That's where I share content. Absolutely. Thank you. Link down below. Reach men that way. DMs, absolutely. Everything I do is by myself. There's no automated chats or chatbots or anything like that. We have deep conversations and real conversations.
Sorry for mine. I have way too many.
I appreciate that, brother. Maybe one day. And again, we've had that discussion about automation in the past. It's really important that men actually feel safe, and it's important that you and I and men like us doing the work can open up space and capacity for other men around the planet that are having challenges, and to know that they're not alone and there's help out there. So obviously Instagram is one. The other one is my website, which is www.almarlife.com.au. It's in evolution as well, but it's usually got links to any events that I hold, as well as access to resources, and then access to myself and my subscription and email list. So send out emails as well, similar to yourself. And I run here on my farm what I can label either embodiment retreats, masculine leadership retreats, men's work. We're running them seasonally here on the farm, and that's another aspect. And we didn't get to that point today, Alessandro, but I hold events here for men. And again, going back to that embodiment, those actions, the physical behaviors that a man can actually learn to be able to release emotion, access emotion, build a network, build a brotherhood. This is incredibly important. And, these events really, really light me up as well. I work with one of my business partners, who's the Dad Coach Australia, and we facilitate events here on the farm, and it's called the Primal Collective. And it's something that I'm probably most proud of, to be honest, mate, to crack open men, to open up my farm, to open up my home, And we dive deep into the work. We build trust, we build connection, we have rites of passage practice, we access the father wound through ceremony, we do breath as well, breath work, nervous system regulation, and body regulation and self-regulation is a big part of my work. Again, too, it's something that I'm very proud of. It's probably one of the biggest things that's moved the needle for me, being able to learn how to regulate my body, act and respond with grace to the stimulus accordingly, as opposed to be able to react from old patterns and behaviors. So yeah, the Primal Collective as well is something that I'm really passionate about.
That's
and again,
beautiful.
too, if anyone lives locally, close to Melbourne, close to Sydney, it's a rural adventure. But again, too, yeah, if anyone's interested in the work that I do there, appreciate the shout out, appreciate a call out. Love to have a conversation, Alessandro.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure I'd like to come to one of your retreats one day. We're we're wanting to spend a bit more. Yeah, I want to spend more time in Australia. All right, my man. That was an absolute pleasure, and thanks for joining.
You're welcome, man. Thank you.
That's the episode. That's all I got for you today. I just want you to remember you're not alone in this. Make sure you subscribe to stay connected, of course, and comment your win, because every time a man sees other men winning, they don't feel alone anymore, and I love that. Tools are in the show notes, starting with the Better Husband in 2-minute emails. Let's build this together. I'll see you next week.